Hello again and welcome to another online creative talk. We nearly got to the end of our programme in real life, but of course Delta had something else for us. So I'm really pleased this afternoon to be able to introduce you to a really good friend of mine who is also an amazing actor, director, producer. She's got film and TV and stage experience coming out of her ears. I'd like to welcome Cath Boniface.
Oh, thank you very much, Magdalene. Nice to be here.
Welcome. Most welcome. So, Cath, we've got a little bit of history together, that we've worked together on a couple of plays, but I know that you are deeply steeped in the performing arts. Would you like to tell us how you got your start?
Well, it was rather inauspicious, Mags. There was nothing sort of creatively, there was no creative drive towards being anything amazing in the performing arts. It was essentially, I was studying at university at Waikato University, and the way degrees were structured back in the prehistoric times when I was there was that you had to, obviously you had a major, and a second major, and then you had a number of supporting papers that you had to take, so that you rounded out your degree with sort of 21 papers a year, I think it was, if I remember off the top of my head. And I decided I needed some easy credits, I needed some easy papers. So I ran my finger down the list of papers that were offered at Waikato University, and I went, drama, that is me, that's where I need to be. I can pass that, anyone can pass that, I'm doing it. So I applied, I put it down, and I got in. And what happened was that little did I know that the University of Waikato had engaged a man by the name of Jeremy Bell, who began basically the whole drama program for the University of Waikato. And it was very much in its infancy. I think it had run for 1 year just when I started. It was only offering 2 papers, one level 1 and one level 2. And he's an Englishman. I believe he's still working there.
Right.
And he had recently come over from the UK, where he had directed plays at, I'm trying to think of which theatre company he did it for. It will come to me, but he directed plays in London, essentially.
Yeah. And
so he came to this tiny little, well, Hamilton was a backwater back then, but I believe it's become a lot more sophisticated. So he'd come and he'd started up this drama program, and we kicked off with a show, and it was one of those very popular shows that people love to go and see when there are brand new actors and performers, and that was Antigone.
Of course.
That wonderful classic, Antigone, in the hands of not very experienced actors, was probably quite painful, to be honest. But I was hooked, absolutely hooked. So I completed my level 1 paper and went back for the year 2 paper that was on offer. And from that, I decided that acting was where I wanted to be. It was in my lane. I loved it, got an absolute buzz out of it. And I applied for the New Zealand Drama School.
Right.
I got shortlisted twice, but ruthlessly kicked out both times. I know. They're lost, Max. They're lost.
Definitely.
And then I was really fortunate in that the Performing Arts School, which at that stage was, I think, in a tiny little studio in Ponsonby, had moved to Unitec.
Right.
And again, I was in the second year that it was ever being offered. And at that stage, it was a Diploma in Acting for Screen and Theatre, a 2-year degree, under the leadership of Murray Hutchinson. So I did a 2-year diploma in that, was released out into the world as a freelance actor, and basically worked as a freelance actor for I'd say 7 or 8 years until I had a family, took a bit of a break, and then for another sort of 7 or 8 years after that. So yeah, and a myriad of paying jobs. Got an agent, did the ads. Some of those international ads paid very well. And your Shortland Streets, your other Kiwi fare. Xena was just was just starting as I was coming out of drama school. Hercules had been on for a while, and of course that lined the pockets of many an actor in New Zealand.
Yeah.
So that a couple of made-for-TV movies for the Life, I think it's Life channel in the States.
Right.
So yeah, and tried to do theatre as much as I could, but it does not pay the rent, unfortunately.
Oh.
So, and at that stage, the theatre scene in Auckland was growing. The Silo Theatre, which is now the Basement Theatre, it was the Silo Theatre at that stage, was just in its infancy. Now it offers a place for young actors to go and create theatre, and I have seen some really great shows come out of there. But at that stage, it was still really brand new. The Watershed Theatre had closed down. The only professional theatre companies I think that were running at that stage was down in Christchurch, Court Theatre.
Right.
In Christchurch, was it Christchurch, Dunedin? Christchurch, and Fortune Theatre in Dunedin, Fortune Theatre in Dunedin. Yeah. So, yeah, that's right. So, yeah, it was difficult to sort of really get your foot into the professional theatre door. Also, the Mercury had gone as well.
Right.
So yeah, and had a family, and then I saw one day a poster advertising Richard III. Over here on the shore, and that was Shoreside Theatre's Outdoor Summer Shakespeare. And I didn't go along to it, but I went to audition the following year. And that's brought me to where I am now.
Brought you to where you are now.
Yeah.
I'm just going to backpedal a little bit here.
So
you were in Xena and Hercules.
Yes.
So what was that like? Because it was really popular around the world. I mean...
Yeah, I think it really was. It's got such a cult following as well. And, you know, pitched Lucy Lawless's career into the stratosphere.
Yeah.
I think I wasn't aware. I can't remember what season I think I first, because I played 3 different roles in 3 different episodes across however many seasons.
Right.
So I think when my first role was playing a virgin priestess,
of course,
as you do.
Like Cath.
Of course. Not that we wore much. We were not terribly pious virgin priestesses.
Right.
We were swathed in not much fabric, but that was Xena's popularity, really, wasn't it? So yes, and I didn't have an understanding of exactly how popular the show was, to be honest. And I think at that stage it was really just starting to kind of lift in terms of its viewership and that the cult status that it eventually sort of gained. So I was a little bit unaware.
Yeah.
And Kiwis are so laid back about the whole thing. You would never know on set that it was the show that it was becoming. It was, we filmed in summer out in Massey, Red Hill, I think it's called, the area. And it was just, you'd sort of turn up. I had a couple of lines, as long as you banged out an American accent, you know, and the hair curled. It was great. Filming on set when there is no pressure to be the main role or the lead or to carry lots of lines is really a lot of fun. And Kiwi crews and Kiwi actors, because of course it employed a lot of Kiwi actors, have a really... just have a good time. They know how to have a good time. And I'm sure it was stressful for the producer. I'm sure the poor bloodshot-eyed woman running around with a manila folder would not describe it as such, but I had a fantastic time, a really, really fun time. And working with some fantastic actors. Martin Shawkisch I worked with, who is an actor who now plays basically every sort of faintly European-looking gangster, Polish gangster. He's working a lot overseas. He was fantastic. At that stage he was a New Zealand actor that was really on the up and up. Lucy Lawless, of course, Jayla Gaia, who worked in Australia. A lot of people will know him as working on a few popular Australian series. So that was really, really great to watch good actors, good Kiwi actors, you know, strapping on their American accents and excuse the phrase, kicking ass, really, which is why I think the series was so popular.
Yeah.
I think that really lent its a hand to that.
Yeah.
Good fun.
And
I got to wear lots of leather and swords.
So, so not just the swathings, leather as well.
Oh, leather, chainmail.
Oh,
swords. It was great. The artists that worked on that thing were incredible. And you'd go for your costume fitting, and you'd walk into and they were warehouses. They were warehouses filled with armor and horse heads and pendant light. It was honestly, it was like a little bit of it's kind of one of those sort of dreamlike places that you just want to go and walk around. It was fun, so much fun.
And you said you've done Shorty. Now, I can remember seeing you on Shorty as a psychologist, because I think it wasn't long after we met and I walked into my lounge and there you were on my telly box.
That's right. I played again, and it seems to be the lot of Kiwi actors, is that you do, if you're not a main role on any one of these Kiwi shows that are put on, you are recycled in varying to varying degrees. So I think the first role I played, I was in my sort of mid-20s, so it must have been not too long after graduating.
A couple of years ago then, yeah.
Thank you, Max. That's very kind of you. She says.
All part of the service.
So I played a young woman who was the victim of domestic abuse,
right,
and did about 4 or 5 episodes of that, and then later on played a psychologist who I can't remember the storyline exactly, but there was I think she ended up being a murderer. She was a sociopath anyway.
Something like that,
yeah. I failed psychologist clearly because I didn't fix her.
And that nicely ties in with a couple of the previous talks that we've had this season, because we started off with Linda Cartwright, who you know very well.
Yes, I do.
Does speech work and everything with people from on Shortland Street, and we had Denise Snowd, who'd also played somebody who was a little bit dodgy in Shortland Street. She ended up pinned under an ambulance, she told me.
That ambulance features quite a lot.
Yeah. So it's sort of like the Illuminati? That's something like that, of Shortland Street, have been on the creative talks this year.
Yeah.
So what notable plays? I mean, you said you did Antigone. I mean, that must have been the career highlight, and then it was all downhill after that.
Funnily enough, Mags, that's not quite correct. Antigone was, you have to cut your teeth on something, don't you?
Sure.
Antigone was as good as any. Obviously, with all Greek dramas, you have a chorus, and I was chorus. I didn't play Antigone. And I do recall that there was a soldier, of course, a messenger that came in. And this particular soldier had 2 massive, big messages that he had to bring in, one at the beginning of the play and one at the end of the play. And this lovely chap, Nigel, who was playing the soldier, came in to the first sort of speech that he had to give, and started on the second speech. So basically he was wrapping up the play before the play had started. And in my inexperience, I honestly thought that I would need to stand up at some stage, tell the audience that we have to stop the play and start again because the soldiers got it slightly wrong. So if everybody could just sit and chat, we'll start the play again. That's how green I was. So I'm glad that didn't happen. But no, Antigone was not the career highlight in terms of theatre. I would probably say that, a theatrical theatre highlight. Well, I love Shakespeare. Shakespeare is absolutely where I feel most comfortable as an actor. And I actually got a job in Singapore working for a theatre and education program that was being run by an Australian chap, Damien, whose last name escapes me, but he, oddly, I'm not sure why, but I won't question it. He was an English chap based in Australia. He would cast his cast in New Zealand, and then he would scoop us all up and take his cast to Singapore, where he would have various Singaporean businessmen, had arranged with various Singaporean businessmen to perform excerpts from Shakespeare, tales, sort of little international children's tales,
Right.
to school groups across Singapore.
Yeah.
Obviously, Shakespeare formed a part of the curriculum, but also we entertained the younger ones as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was cast in a group. There's a group of about 8 of us, and he'd sort of scoop us all up. Then he'd take our passports away. And then we'd get our passports back. I'm sure it was all to do with working visas and things like that. But let's not let the truth get in the way of a good story there.
Yeah.
But and that would probably be a massive performing highlight, was performing overseas to an excerpt from Shakespeare. So not a play that sort of started at the beginning and ended at the end, to an audience who can be really tricky, you know, if you don't entertain your teenage audience, then they certainly do let you know. So, but not only that, it was I met some fantastic people. So Neil Ray, who is he's a casting agent, Neil Ray, and he's also in what's that? It's that police show, that little country detective Kiwi show that's on at the moment.
Mysteries.
That's right. He is the detective, the lead detective.
Yes.
Yes. So he was my Lysander, and I was Hermia for the little excerpt from, of course, Midsummer Night's Dream. David Aston, who is an actor, an Auckland actor who has performed for Auckland Theatre Company. I believe he's also performed for Tadpole.
Yes, the name rings a bell.
Yes. A really lovely chap. He was also cast that year. Tim Raby. I don't know if you know Tim Raby.
I do know
who
Tim
is
Raby,
a Kiwi actor who is, I think he's done a bit of stuff with Tim Bray.
Yes.
Oh, look, I think Tim has probably Tim Raby
worked with everybody.
He's done it all. Another fantastic chap there. So, and then there was the young, sort of recently graduated actors like myself who performed in that as well. And that was really great. Touring that was awesome. So we did that, I think, for about 6 weeks.
Right.
In Singapore. So that was amazing. That was really good. And it was good being a working actor.
Yes.
Actually making money, reasonable money, over an extended period of time, performing, that, you know, which is always every actor's professional actor's goal. Absolutely. Yeah. So that was a highlight.
So what do you prefer, stage acting or screen acting?
I think stage acting. I think theatre for me. I always found that I struggled a little bit with TV. Sometimes there is a really fine balance between performing and performing truthfully as an actor and not being too big for television. You know, things are really, really small, because obviously it picks up so much more. The camera just picks up so much more. So you do have to pitch your performance a lot more differently. And I did struggle a little bit with TV, because I do find that I'm sort of probably slightly, I like to perform large. I like that. I like not being obvious, or, you know, sort of, I don't know. I just struggled a little bit with with finding a balance between performing for a camera but not being too big. So that was always a bit of an acting struggle for me. So in theatre, I think you can just let yourself go, you know, and the sorts of, I hate to call them rules, but the sorts of rules by which you need to perform, just basic standard acting 101, which is be seen, be heard, you know. I think they just sat with me a lot more easily than TV acting. So I definitely have to say there was a long-winded response. But I should have just said theatre acting. Thanks, Max.
Yes. But that was a very informative answer as well, because there'll be people like there who'll, you know, well, which way should I go?
Yeah, other people really enjoy television acting because they like going inside and working from inside. And while you do that as a theatre actor, there are other things to consider, like being seen and heard. Whereas with television, you can really dig deep and get in there and find the truth and the camera will find you, whereas in theatre is slightly different.
Yeah. So it's been a little while since we've seen you on the boards when you're acting, because you've moved to the grand directing. How did that come about?
Oh, well, I directed because when you graduate from performing arts or from drama school, you are cast out into the big wide world, and somehow you've got to get your own work going. And quite often there's lots of chiefs and not there's lots of Indians but not enough chiefs. Is that
yes?
To use a very poor metaphor? That's not really a metaphor, but so there's lots of actors but not people who want to direct or to put shows on, to produce or to do the backstage stuff, and that does come up quite a lot. So I teamed up with a pair of chaps who were putting on the Dumbwaiter, Harold Pinter's Dumbwaiter, and they'd scraped together their savings and they were putting on this show, but they were on their own. Essentially, they managed to I think bully a lighting person into to light it. Luckily, it was fairly easy to light. And they said, we just need you to come and cast your eye over this. And so I said, yeah, sure, no problem. So I went there. I went to one of their rehearsals, and it just kind of morphed from there. And being a massive Harold Pinter fan, well, I wasn't at that stage, but I discovered Harold Pinter through the Dumbwaiter. And I just, it's something sort of clicked with me and I do like from a directing point of view, I do come at it from an acting point of view.
Right.
And I do like to, the one thing that I like about acting is working with actors from an acting point of view as a director.
Yeah.
So that's where that started. And from there, and out of love for Shakespeare, I did one of the Auckland University Shakespeares, and we did As You Like It. That was in the second year of performing arts, so probably we're looking at about 95. I know, such a long time ago.
That's weird.
Horses were the main mode of transport. So I performed in As You Like It, played Celia, and I met a chap by the name of Tor Fraser, who we may have heard of. He played Sylvius, the lovelorn shepherd in this version of As You Like It. And I went along to a festival show that he'd put on, or it was a festival of work, and he'd written a piece, a short play, and he had his friend Steve Toffa play the role. So he cast all his friends. He was a big party student chap, liked a good drink, was working at event cinemas. Really, really lovely chap, and clearly quite talented. And I really enjoyed the show, and I said how much I enjoyed the show. So when he continued to write, and he put together a play by the name of Bear.
Yes.
He got myself and another chap by the name of Michael Robinson, who was a Canadian who had come over to work, and who had directed the As You Like It, the Auckland University Shakespeare As You Like It. And Michael, he got myself and Michael Robinson along, and we workshopped it a little bit. I mean, he'd write it, and then and we were going to put it all together, and then it just didn't really happen. I'm not too sure why. I think I might have been cast. I got a job, and of course it was a paying job. And Michael, I think he pulled out of the project as well. But in the end, Tor got the project on, and Bear became this huge thing with Madeline Sami and Ian Hughes. So it was recast at a later stage, and by that stage he'd added a whole bunch of different characters, because of course there's a multitude of characters in the show, and he'd developed it, and it was absolutely amazing. And I do remember thinking, kick myself there, missed out on that. But what came out of that was he asked if I would direct number 2, which had been commissioned by the Silo Theatre. Sharon Duncan was running the Silo Theatre as part of a festival at the Silo Theatre. And so he asked me to direct that. Right. He was writing this piece. And so I met Madeline Sami, who was the star and was somebody that Tor had met through Bear, I think it was. I think she had been cast. Of course she'd been cast in Bear. So the three of us worked on this piece, and it was I remember opening night. That's probably the highlight of my directing career, is opening night of that, because it was a one-woman show. It was very much something that had never really been seen on theatre before. We didn't see a lot of Kiwi plays. I mean, you had Bruce Mason and Roger Hall, but this was Pacifica, which was very, very new to theatre, and in the hands of Madeline Sami, who was hugely comedic, and the hands of Tor Fraser, who is poetic, and yet super relevant, and super current. It was just one of those things that came together, and all I really needed to do, and it's what I like about directing is getting the actor working. And she was obviously it was a one-woman show, and she was incredibly talented, but she hadn't trained. Right. And while I'm not saying that training is what every actor needs to do, because clearly there are actors that don't train and are still very, very good actors, there were just little, again, those, I refer to them as rules, but they're not really, but just techniques.
Yeah.
And then there were things like, there was a scene where two of the characters had a fight. How do you have a fight as a one woman play? So she ended up just kind of punching herself. And I remember thinking, it was hilarious. It was really funny. But can we do that? Isn't that just a little bit silly? And we backed ourselves. Tor thought it was hilarious. He said, no, that's cool. That's what's going to happen. And so it became part of the play. So in the fight scene, she basically fought herself physically all over this tiny stage. And that was just one example of one sample of a piece of the play, but the audience loved it, and they loved the play, and the feedback that we got from the play was incredible. And obviously it went on to do great things. It won an award at the Edinburgh Festival. It did awesome things, and I believe he might be studied in some schools now. I'm not sure.
I believe so. Yeah, it's been up and around. I think it was actually at the PumpHouse a few years ago.
Yes. Yeah. I do remember that it was. So that probably was certainly a directorial highlight there, and probably the thing that really piqued my interest. Then I sort of had a bit of a break because I had a family, and then I've sort of been slowly getting back into it, as it were. I had other opportunities to direct, but it's quite difficult when you've got little ones. So you sort of have to get them to a certain age where you're able to commit 3 to 4 nights a week or days per week, and then you have to sort of work it around paying work if it's unpaid work, or if it's share of profits. There's all sorts of juggling acts that need to happen as a working actor and a working director, as it were. So and so I've directed a couple of things for I've done a couple of short little plays for other actors, sort of more less directorial and more kind of feeding back things. But so that's and then of course I recently directed the latest Shortland Theatre, Agatha Christie, which was The Mousetrap, which
absolutely sold out.
Yes.
How did you find that? How did you find that? Because I know you've directed Shakespeare. Did you find a difference between directing Shakespeare and directing Agatha Christie? Because it's very different.
Yes, it is. It really is. And I hadn't directed, apart from Shakespeare, I hadn't directed an ensemble piece before. Could you call Agatha Christie contemporary? Well, she's more contemporary than perhaps Shakespeare. She's a little more recent. I hadn't directed an ensemble before in a more current piece, so that was loads and loads of fun. I wasn't hugely familiar with Agatha Christie's work either. I'd seen a couple of plays that Shawside had put on. It's not a genre that I had been attracted to as a director or a performer. It's just sort of not. There have been other things that I like to see, but this is the Agatha Christie is just really grown in popularity lately, and there are all of these plays being remounted as movies, and Kenneth Branagh's Murder on the Orient Express, and I think there's another couple out there. So there's been a real renewed interest in her. So I wasn't familiar with her work, but I was really lucky to have a great cast of lovely actors from sort of all over the place. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. I still prefer Shakespeare. I still prefer directing Shakespeare. I love our outdoor summer Shakespeare. I just think Shakespeare should be performed outdoors. I just think it's the perfect place for Shakespeare. So I would love to direct another Shakespeare. Definitely love to direct another Shakespeare. So I did Macbeth a couple of years ago. Would love to do wrap my teeth around or sink my teeth into Richard III would be a good one. Yep. And I watched over the last lockdown David Tennant. I know. Stop. Your beating heart.
Swoon.
Swoon. David Tennant's Richard II. Now I've never seen or read Richard II, and what a play!
What a play!
It's magnificent.
Yeah, and what a set.
Yeah. Yes.
From a backstage perspective, what a set. But yeah. Richard II.
So, Richard II.
If David wants to, rekindle his. You might consider auditioning him.
Next time he rings me, Max, I might bring it up.
Thank you very much. That'd be lovely. So you've got no plans to direct or anything in the next 12 months or so because you're so busy being the president. Tell me what's that like, being the president of Shoreside? What does that entail?
The president of Shortland Theatre. So I became president of Shortland Theatre a couple of years ago. I love community theatre. And as a professional actor, sometimes I think professional actors tend to look down their noses on community theatre, but they provide an incredibly important base for young actors wishing to start out, older actors wishing to return to acting, but in a more doing it for the love of it type of thing, or I really enjoyed doing it in my 20s, would love to come back to it. There is community theatre has a spirit that is, once you're in there, once it's got its hooks into you, I think it can be a really wonderful thing. So when the presidency sort of came up for Shoreside, I grabbed it. It is a busy role. It is all done outside of my own working life. I'm full-time, obviously employed elsewhere. So it can be a full-on role. And trying to just cram everything in there is difficult. And I think a lot of community theatre companies are having the same struggle in terms of just resourcing now. People are time poor. Less likely to volunteer in an ongoing manner, so they might pop up for a show and then sort of disappear off again, and I totally understand that. So the logistics of sort of keeping it going are difficult. Shoreside doesn't have while we have a sort of a rehearsal base, we don't have our own theatre. We don't have props rooms or places to build props and sets and all that sort of stuff. So there are we're set up slightly differently to perhaps say something like Dolphin Theatre or Howick Theatre, who have their own theatre and rooms and stuff. So we have to think a little bit more creatively as a community theatre company. The great thing is that Shoreside has been around forever. It's been around for such a long time, and many people across the shore know of us, associate us with the PumpHouse. But which is not a bad thing at all, because the PumpHouse is a wonderful venue, a really beautiful venue, and it lends itself, I think, to Shoreside in terms of an ongoing venue really well. There is a nice little sync with PumpHouse as a venue. So I've got a great committee, and we are trying to embrace sort of the 2021s, Mags. We've moved into, we had a committee meeting the other day. Obviously, we couldn't have it face to face as we would normally traditionally do. So we had to find out how we were going to meet. So we went through the Zoom, and we went through the Facebook, and we went through the Meets, and we went through the Google Teams. We finally, between us all, have come up with a way of communicating. So we are dragging ourselves out of the sort of the 1990s there.
Cool.
So it has its challenges, but when we put on shows and like the Agatha Christie, which sold out with a wonderful cast and a really fantastic young crew, we've got some young lighting, a young lighting crew that's sort of coming up and learning. They're still at school, but they are really, really using this as a tool to just grow their experience. So that's always really satisfying, really satisfying. So not just from a performing point of view, not from just a making money point of view, because every sort of dollar we make we put back into other shows, so that's important. Important. But also sort of growing a backstage cast. We'd love a set builder. That'd be great. Set builder would be awesome.
Well, there you go. We might put this out and people might think, free advertising.
Thank you. But yeah, it's I think Shoreside is going to it knows what's working for it,
right?
And we just keep on going. We're really looking forward to a Shakespeare season. We've unfortunately had to postpone our one-act plays, which were due at the end of this month. It's just the logistics of being able to rehearse and get it ready in time have been difficult. They've just been postponed till the beginning of next year, but we are now sending out expressions of interest for auditions for our Outdoor Summer Shakespeare for 2022. And it has to be expressions of interest at this stage because we're not too sure how we're going to audition people. So we're just working our way through what happens at each individual alert level, what that will allow us to do. So that's our current challenge.
You see, people who come and watch the shows wouldn't realise there's all that goes on behind the scenes.
And it starts in August. It starts in August, and we actually don't perform until sort of January, February. So it's a massive commitment particularly from a sort of a backstage producing type of point of view.
So how have you coped with lockdown as a creative? Because you've not had that outlet unless you've gone over Zoom.
I've watched lots of TV. I'm watching the what is it, the Last Kingdom at the moment.
Right,
yes, which is I've been loving it, but not getting a lot of sleep. I think in terms of lockdown, I think it's and particularly from a sort of a community theatre point of view, it is embracing technology and just getting on with hooking up with things like Zoom, understanding Google Meet, understanding and trying to work out with people how to connect online, because that is how we're going to get through this. And the thing is about theatre and performing is it's actually all about connection. It's connection, and online allows you to connect as a mother, a brother, a son, a daughter, a colleague, a work colleague, and a creative. So embrace online, find out what works for you and what works for other people, and keep connected. It's also a really good opportunity for young actors to maybe put down some auditions, put down some tapes, take the time to hook up your camera and your audio and put something down, a monologue, a Shakespeare monologue, or something contemporary and perhaps something older. That I would fully encourage young performers in particular to do that. It's difficult for crew and lighting crew and backstage crew, because if there's not a show, then there's very little you can do. I would fully encourage young performers to put something down. And then it's there. So if we get to a situation where you'd like to audition for something and we can't physically see you, then it's just, press send on an email.
That's really great advice.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for taking the time to talk to us and giving us the insight into Cath Boniface.
Oh, thank you, Max. It was a pleasure.
And we'll have you back again in real life when we get out of whatever we get out of.
Yes.
You can come and bring some photos.
Yes. You take care, Max.
Thank you very much for that, and
thank you, no problem.
We'll see you soon.